Yeah, because obviously we're going to turn our attentions to France. They are the victors in this one. They are the ones who are progressing. But it is interesting that you say that, Rob, when you see what it comes to those fine margins for England, because one player that everybody talked about before this game was Kylian Mbappe. How to stop Kylian Mbappe? How are England going to deal with it? And I feel as though, Rob, that's the one player that we weren't talking about as much in this French side when we watched this game.
Exactly that. I was at the last round when England beat Senegal, and the questions immediately after that game for Gareth Southgate were all about Kylian Mbappe. How do you stop him? What kind of player is he? And we've seen tonight that he didn't really impact the game. It was interesting. The one player that Gareth Southgate did pick out after that Senegal game was Griezmann, who's had those 2 assists, and the second one in particular is wonderful. And I'm sure that Gareth Southgate will have planned for this for the week. The problem is with France, it isn't just one player. These are world-class players. They're world-class players all over the pitch. And on this big stage, it only takes one chance, and France have taken it. Griezmann with that ball into the box, and Giroud doing what he's made a whole career out of. It's England love to build up these players like Kylian Mbappe before games, and worry about him and fear him. You've got to worry about the entire French team because maybe they've got a tad lucky tonight, but they're a fantastic side.
Yeah, they really. Do you know what's funny, isn't it, Gabby? When you talk about Antoine Griezmann, it's a player we followed so long, for so many years, and the whole story that we talked about him in La Liga. We've seen him at Atleti, at Barcelona, but he does come up big in this French side, and I think sometimes he can be a bit of an unsung hero for them. He's just such a hard worker always, and that's something that we've seen historically with him. I mean, looking at this one now and looking how France go ahead, obviously it's going to be up against Morocco. Do you have a favourite when we come to the final four of the two that will be going on to progress from what we've seen?
I fancy Morocco against this French side. I really did not think that their performance was solid by any means today. I think Morocco will like their chances against this French back line. Kane won that battle with Upamecano on the back line. Speaking of Mbappe, he was quiet. He was integral in that first goal, Chouameni, before the ball actually gets to Griezmann, and it's all Mbappe there. So I will say that, of course, this is one of the best players in the world that we're speaking about. But Antoine Griezmann, I think, is going to be a key player that Morocco are obviously going to have to keep their eyes on. It was a big match for Griezmann, just as you alluded to, Kay. He actually surpassed both Thierry Henry and Zizou. Now has 28 assists for the French national team. But I think that Moroccan fans are watching this match, just like I said in the opening statement, and I think that they like their chances. This French back line are going to have to really tighten up if they're going to stop Moroccan's counter press. That one-touch passes that we saw rip through the Portuguese national team today, that's coming at France next, and I fancy Morocco's chances.
There's a fan comment here that England are very Spursy. Obviously, that's a bit harsh, saying that can be in your hands and you throw it away. And it's tough because obviously they had the chance to level it, Rob. We saw with Harry Kane stepping up once again. And the storyline there, obviously, the fact that he's coming up against Lloris and the two know each other very well, the fact that it was a penalty in the same game as well. And it's just something I want to go back to just with England, because I saw one of our colleagues as well, James Ollie, saying it's a bold decision from Gareth Southgate. He's got the feeling now he can go toe to toe with the big sides and he doesn't have to do certain things to accommodate for them, to adapt to them. In fact, even going into it, we keep hearing about this report that he commissioned into France's win 4 years ago, the fact that they'd had that heartbreak in Euro 2016 on home turf and that they were able to bounce back. They were able to rally back and win the World Cup in 2018. He wanted to know how France took a step after losing the Euros, how they managed to do that. And then coming into this one, he's obviously feeling confident in his side. So I want to get your thoughts, Rob, on first, and I want to separate the two as well. What you thought of his starting 11 today, what your initial reaction to that was, and we've had a fan question on that as well. And then what you think about his subs and what he could have done better.
I mean, in terms of the starting 11, I don't think I would have changed it. I was a little bit. I thought that he may go 5 at the back because that's what we've seen Southgate do historically in the past. A little bit more cautious. Worried about a fantastic French team. And in fairness to him, he didn't. I think a lot of England fans will look to that team that started and think that's the team that I would have started. They played so well against Senegal. They made lots of chances. They scored goals. And it was a sign that maybe Gareth Southgate is looking at his England team and saying, we've got the players now to go toe-to-toe with England. I think the problem is now, given that they've lost, is that it's very easy to stick the boot in and say, your starting 11 wasn't right, the subs weren't right, this wasn't right. But you said it yourself, earlier in the show, it's a game of very, very fine margins. And I don't actually think that England were that far away. I mean, obviously, it's easy in hindsight for me to sit here and say, he should have brought this player on at this time, or he should have gone off then. Who would be a football manager? That's the problem with the job. I just think it's one of those days that it comes down to such fine margins at this level. And France have got the better of that today. And I think you just have to look at it and go, fair play. Hopefully England can bounce back in the way that France did and win the World Cup. And England maybe in 2026 in the US can build on this fantastic young team. Obviously, we'll just have to wait and see.
To bounce off of what Rob said, the big question was going to be, was Southgate going to resort back to the 3 at the back or 5 at the back? And then the other question was, who was going to win that midfield battle? And I think that England won it. I think that Jordan Henderson, Declan Rice, and Bellingham won that midfield battle. And that's why we saw England perform at the level that they did today, especially in the second half. Saka was all over the shop. And I think a lot of England fans perhaps pointing their finger at his decision to take him off, perhaps not bringing on Rashford or Grealish as early as they wanted to see. But ultimately, I think that Southgate's plan worked. We saw England play perhaps not only their best performance here at this World Cup, but perhaps in the Southgate era today. And unfortunately, it wasn't enough to book their ticket to the next round. But I think I'm with Rob. I think hindsight is 20/20. The same goes for many critics of the Portuguese national team as well. And I think he ultimately got this right. Unfortunately, the ball just didn't tip in their favor.
No, and unfortunately, Craig Burley actually thought it might go England's way today, and I feel as though he may have given us a kiss of death and done so happily as well. I tell you what else has been a bit of a surprise to me. Dan Thomas has just texted saying this is the best he's seen England play for a long time, and I can't argue with him. And obviously, Dan's a huge England fan as well, because you know what, Rob, as well, it's the fact that we saw them trailing. It was the first time that we'd seen that in this World Cup, that they didn't drop their heads, that they did come out. And I suppose that does feed into this narrative that Gareth Southgate is feeling now, that this is a team that can go toe-to-toe with these sides. I want to pick out a few players, though, a few players that really did stand out. And I want to get your thoughts on what you saw from Bukayo Saka today, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, fantastic. Actually, of the starting 11, if I was going to make one change, he would have probably been the change. But having seen his performance, obviously that's why I'm not a football manager, because he was absolutely fantastic. For such a young guy to bounce back, particularly from what happened at the end of the Euros, to play like that in this tournament on this stage at that age, it is fantastic. And I just think he embodies now what this England team should be. There's a fearlessness about them. Obviously, it's not gone their way today, and it's easy, like we've said, to stick the boot in once the results in. But there's a fantastic core of young players, and Saka is at the centre of that. And I've seen so many England teams suffer really limp exits at World Cups. You think about, Brazil in 2002, Portugal 2006. Just where you're just watching the clock tick down, just waiting for them to go out, and that just didn't feel like that today. Obviously, England are out, and it's disappointing and what have you. But I just don't feel that it was that. It wasn't that style of World Cup exit. It's very, very hard to look at the positives right now, but I just think there are more positives to come out of tonight than there are negatives for England.
Thank you very much for watching ESPN FC on YouTube. For more highlights, analysis and exclusive content, be sure to subscribe.